Before money for me was a tool for survival, for me now it's a tool for creation. I've been a tech executive for about 20 years, worked for very large companies for a long time, led global businesses, and it led me to the point that I felt at some point pretty empty. I was running on empty, I don't know, probably for several years. It was painful enough that I didn't want to continue that way.
Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you start connecting to yourself?
First of all, there's what I was before and what I am now, and then there's how I got here. Somewhere around 8 years ago, it started with a friend recommending transcendental meditation. So that was the first thing I did to try to kind of get myself in balance in this very chaotic environment. I chose to create myself really as the possibility of peace, grace, and prosperity. Those three words really resonated the most with me, connected the most with who I want to be. Not who I've been, but who I want to be. And out of that, I created everything else.
Do you feel that you always have to act in a sense that no matter what you do, this is what you have to bring to the world?
I don't feel that this is something that's forced on me. I feel it's my choice. We started the fund as a community as well. So we have a global community with 500 investors from 35 different cities. And the goal really was to connect these people, to have a network where we have trust between people. People can create business together and also create good together. That was really the idea behind it.
I'm really excited to have you, Eran Sandhaus. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Eran. I'm very excited to be here, this beautiful place together with you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
You are a special person in my life, and it's not every day I can have somebody like you here with me. So this is going to be really interesting.
You're setting the bar high. I'm embarrassed.
Well, there's a lot of connection between what we do and how we got here today. And you always appear in my life in moments of like a tipping point. I feel like it's like that now as well. So maybe we can start by, maybe I can ask you a few questions about how did you got here today? What was the path, if you can share?
Gladly. Okay, well, thank you. Well, you're taking me back, I think, probably about 6 years. Is that right?
Yes.
Something like that. I think you and I met, I was at Plug and Play in Silicon Valley, and there was a panel of startups who were presenting, and you were one of them. And given that you're an Israeli, I wanted to reach out and connect with you right afterwards and see how you're doing. And afterwards, we set up to have a coffee together. And I remember that we're sitting in Mountain View in a restaurant. And you told me about your company. And then I think I caught at the corner of my eyes that there was something else that was missing. So we started to have a conversation about what else you'd like to have.
So the company was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back then, I was really lost. I could tell you that, and you were there to push me to an interesting direction, which was a good thing. And after that, I left the U.S. and came here. So funny enough, thanks to Orca, this wonderful singer who blessed us here in her presence in Yoko Connect number 3, we met again.
I think we got to close the circle, because the journey started 6 years ago, and after you left, we kept in touch. I think you went to something pretty substantial 6 years ago, and then you decided to come here. And, for me, friendships are not necessarily the people I talk to every day, but the people I have deeper conversations with. And you and I always had deep conversations. And at the time you were talking about your vision, about how you're going to create this place. And I thought to myself, this guy's crazy. He's a tech entrepreneur. What does he understand about any real estate or development? It didn't make any sense to me, but you were persistent and you kept on showing me the blueprints and everything looked beautiful. And every time we spoke about it, I said, okay, I got to, maybe at some point come to see it. And then he gave me the excuse to come here last January, and what you created is a miracle.
I also think it's a miracle. There was a lot of misalignment. You actually notice misalignment in people more often. And you give from yourself. Where does all that come from?
Yeah, I think first of all from my personal journey, and then afterwards from some other training I've done. But at this point, when I see people that are that there's something in the background that's not complete or not happy, or that happens for us human beings very often. It's not very rare. Then now that I notice it, I cannot not talk about it with people and ask them what's going on and start to discuss. But it started with my personal journeys. I've been a tech executive for about 20 years, worked for very large companies for a long time, led global businesses. And it led me to the point that I felt at some point pretty empty. I was running on empty, I don't know, probably for several years, flying all over the world, but I was pretty much on my own the whole time. And I managed a large team, but I felt very lonely doing it. So that kind of pushed me to a point that it was painful enough that I didn't want to continue that way.
And okay, so tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you start connecting to yourself? Because you obviously also changed path, and now you're, as far as in my eyes, you're into impact, climate. You created a fund. You're here to change the world. Tell us a little bit about that journey, about the new purpose that you discovered.
Yeah, I think, first of all, there's what I was before and what I am now, and then there's how I got here. So in the past, I used to be, I would say, like a serial entrepreneur, but working that way in large corporations. So I used to take one company at a time and run it in big companies. So I only do one thing at a time. And now I'm more of a parallel entrepreneur. So I work on multiple things at the same time to push forward, a bigger agenda. And the transition between the two things was, I think early on, when I started as a kind of like at the beginning of an engineer, life was okay. And then the more I started to go up, I thought, I had it in my mind, that the higher up I'm going to go, if I'm going to become more and more senior, I'm going to have more control over stuff. I didn't know it at the time. Now I can explain it. But I thought I'm going to have more control over time, more control over people, more control over resources. So I went all the way up to become a vice president. And the truth is, the more I went up, the more it became worse. Because I had to deal with more and more constraints, more and more issues, more and more things that came up over life. And also to pretend more and more that everything is okay. The larger the team, and when things were not working, everyone's asking, how are you? That's like a typical greeting in the US. And I say, great, even though it wasn't. So being that way for many years, plus working for really, challenging bosses, the more you go up, you get to work with people who are, very, very demanding. And that's not a problem, but very often the way that I was managed was, and that's in a lot of large corporations, is, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of management around fear, a lot of management that is very forceful. And again, sometimes it's necessary the way it is. For me, it didn't work and I didn't enjoy it. So somewhere around 8 years ago, it started with a friend recommending transcendental meditation. So that was the first thing I did to try to kind of get myself in balance in this very chaotic environment. Afterwards, I got a Shih Tzu dog. I decided I need to have an animal that will always come and smile to me when I get back home. And after that, in the last corporate position that I worked, there was one day we acquired a competing company, and that gave me the chance at that point to merge and leave the company. And this was a big moment because in the day that we closed the transaction, I remember that was the first time, it was, I think, a Thursday at 2 p.m. I didn't get any more emails, I didn't get any more texts, no one was calling me anymore, right? The whole group that we acquired was taking over everything I did. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And the HR person that used to work for me came and she said, go home now.
And then what?
Yes, I went home and I didn't know what to do. I was like clueless. What am I going to do next? So I didn't know. What I did next is I started to talk to people that have a very different lifestyle than mine. So my lifestyle was all about work, work, work. And then I started to talk to people, other people. I go to Burning Man and go to different adventures. And I said, okay, maybe let's see if I can get a little bit of what they have. And I asked a friend of mine, what do you recommend I do? And he told me, enjoy this thing called the miracle of life.
Okay.
That's a big statement, right? Like if you think about it. I had no clue. I was actually very sad when he said it because I forgot how to do it.
And that leads to new things. Today you run an impact fund. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were doing right before that, and what was the transition to get to that?
Sure. Before I do that, I'm going to complete the answer to your question. What I did at that point, based on advice from a lot of people, I took some courses in the area of ontology, the study of being, and that started to focus my attention on the difference between what we do and who we're being. I never looked back at my own operating system, what drove me to do the things that I did. And once I started to do it, there were things that I were no longer willing to do the same way.
For example?
Yeah, you're asking a good question. So for example, something that I didn't know, things that I learned along the path is, I asked myself, like, how did I end up here? Like in this place doing what I'm doing now, you start to really like try to figure it out. And what I got is, early on I learned from my family that you need to make a lot of money. So one day you can make, you can do good. I always wanted to do good, and I always got the message that now is not the time. Go earn a lot of money, go focus on that, and one day you can go and do it. And what I realized is that was the best advice that I could get. okay, from my parents, given their background, right, or what they passed before. And I realized that also I don't need to live that way. Okay, I can go and I can create a positive impact and I can go work with things in a completely different way than what I thought. So that was one thing. The second thing I got, which never occurred to me before, is that I realized that I'm actually not present with people, like at all. At all, for 15 years. What I realized is that I was always operating from, I have a lot of stuff to do. So when someone sits across from me, when they say something, I actually don't listen to them. In my head, I'm already solving all the problems that I need to solve. I have a lot to do. And I'm pretending to be listening. I nod my head, I kind of get some of the words, but I'm actually listening to 5% of what they're saying. So I'm actually not connected to any person in front of me. And that, by the way, was not only limited to work, I also took that home with me. So that was a very big realization. That was for me, January 26, 2018, that was the last day I decided I'm going to cut this out. I'm done with this. And that was a big shift, just the ability to be present is a really, really big shift. That is connected also to the ability to enjoy, okay, the miracle of life.
I feel very similar to you, because when you're in this path, in this disconnect, and I was also for many years working companies and I was disconnected from myself, because you're always kind of like pursuing this goal of success, of money, or whatever it is, you only need that. That becomes the main thing, and that disconnects you from other people, even that you're actually sitting there physically. So we were both in misalignment with our past, and to me, I became sick to one point. I just couldn't stand it anymore, and then I came here. What triggered, tell a little bit about your path to really change from one place to another.
Yeah, well, what happened is really that point that we acquired the company and I went home. My wife told me, go, you can do whatever you want. Go travel, I'll take care of the kids, go whatever. And I couldn't figure out what like anything that I wanted to volunteer, anything I wanted to do, any place I wanted to travel, like nothing came up. And when this friend said, enjoy this thing called the miracle of life, I'm like, I really have no clue. It was actually very sad for me. I had no clue how to do it. So that caused me to really look and examine, okay, like what's there. So that was really the main, I would say, like the main pivotal point that got me to, to go on another path. And what I discovered back then in January, there were a lot of things that came up. But I decided I was going, I chose to create myself really as the possibility of peace, grace, and prosperity. Those three words really resonated the most with me, connected the most with who I want to be, not who I've been, but who I want to be. And out of that, I created everything else.
Do you feel that you always have to act in a sense that no matter what you do, this is what you have to bring to the world?
I don't feel that this is something that's forced on me. I feel it's my choice. Okay, this is my choice. And sometimes I'm not that, by the way, and it's okay too. All right, so it's not, I view it as being a possibility of something. It's not a necessary thing. There's a lot of freedom in that. Like if you think about what's the expression of possibility of peace, it's not just the absence of war. Peace is for me, peace for people with themselves, with their families, in their community. It's a much bigger concept. Grace is the giving without the expectation of return. Okay, that's a pretty big concept, which we, a lot of us forgot the path. But if you think about happiness, I'm not doing it for happiness. I'm doing it because it resonates with me. But I found that it's an amazing source of abundance, actually.
So many people see the word grace in such a different way. I would assume so. All these things.
Yeah, there's also a religious connotation to it. That's not what I mean. And prosperity for me is also a big deal, because prosperity, I think when people get to experience abundance, they get to experience prosperity, they get to experience growth, they get to be the biggest version or the bigger version of themselves. So for me, it's about that realization. And that also has to be with the shift that I have with the concept of money. Before, money for me was a tool for survival. For me now, it's a tool for creation.
Can you tell a little bit what you're creating today with your work?
Sure. Yeah, we'll get there now. Yeah. So what I will say is, somewhere around probably 4 years ago, inside of COVID, in one of the funds that I was part of, out of that fund, I created what is now called J Impact. J Impact is a global venture fund to do good in the world. So to do good and to do well. So what we do is we invest money in companies that have a profound and broad measurable impact on people or planet. And essentially, if we boil it down, we invest today primarily in climate solutions and in health. We're also looking all the time for social, things that can improve upward mobility and maximizing human potential. Those are the main domains. And this fund is not a normal fund. It's a very unusual fund and on purpose. My theory of change, I heard this lecture from Sir Ronald Cohen around 4 years ago that spoke about the role of money. He wrote a book called Impact, and he spoke about how the role of money should change back to what it was a long time ago, which was really to do good for people.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
You're opening now a big double click. But
why not?
Yeah,
The sun is still shining.
No problem. Glad to do it.
Kind.
Yeah. So basically, what Sir Ronald Cohen saw a while back, he saw this when Enron started around 2008. There was a crisis in the U.S. He was himself in the venture capital business, and what he realized is that there's something missing. If you take a look at how we measure the success of companies today, we really look for two things. You know what they are?
Financial success.
Yeah, and we measure it really today. Fundamentally, it boils down to two things: profitability and growth. That's it. If you're profitable and you grow, you're good, right? You're going to get more money, more resources, more investors, especially if you do it better than someone else, right? So that's how companies get compared. What we don't look at is the impact that the company has on the environment or the society. It's totally overlooked, right? So if you're a CEO of a company, you have a lot of different things to manage. Usually these are people that know how to play a multi-dimensional game. They move all the stuff around to maximize for these two elements. That drives their compensation, that drives their reputation, that drives a lot of stuff.
But it can affect a lot of people, families, in a very negative way.
Yes, because no one looks at the impact. Sometimes they know that there's a negative impact and they don't do anything. Sometimes they just don't look. There's no measurement of it, right? No one is really looking at it. But because the impact, companies at the end, they take money from investors, they create a product or service, they may have a negative impact in the world on people or planet. Afterwards, hopefully they pay some tax. Hopefully the government takes the tax money and hopefully they do something to close those problems. If they're environmental issues or social issues. The issue is the private sector is 4 times bigger than the public sector. So fast forward 100 years, which is basically where we are now, you're getting into a lot of different crisis situations that are going to get worse.
Can you explain that in simpler words, maybe?
I need to think about it now. Yeah, there's more money in the world right now being invested in creating products and services that are doing
bad for the world.
First of all, we don't know, but a lot of them are doing bad. And the government is not having enough money to even fix the problems fast enough. So we have a situation that more and more, money is poured into this area, and very little money is actually poured into solving those problems. So in this, what Sir Ronald Cohen saw at the time is that the capitalist system is really good in a lot of different things, but it's missing something. What it's missing is actually inserting the word impact as well. If companies were also to measure the impact and be compared on that, now you start to have a different game. Okay, companies will play a 3-dimensional game, profit, growth, and impact, and then they get compared based on that. And once that happens, capitalism starts to fix itself and to fix the world. And that's a very powerful concept.
More and more people are connecting to that concept, and I'm curious, how do you feel this relates back to what we're doing here, to building a community? How do you connect between the two?
Yeah. So I think these things are all interlinked. So if you take a look, first of all, from the concept of what happened in the last 100 years, 100 years ago, we used to live in communities. We used to live with our cousins, our brothers, our sister. Everyone used to live together. We had no privacy. Okay, everyone was in each other's business, but we were together. We had belonging. And we knew that we're part of a collective. It was clear for us that we are part of that collective. We behave as a group. There used to be tribes, okay, all of that. And what happened over the course of the last 100 years, we became autonomous. People moved into cities. Everyone is now independent. We are a lot more individuals than we were in the past. That individual movement is also what's driving us to run businesses, to earn more money, to grow more, to be in that race, moving forward, to succeed more than anyone else. And currently, that's with the current way that the capitalist system is set up, we are driving fast towards a wall in the current paradigm. So when you take a look at what you're creating, which is communities, for me, that's the solution. Okay, when people start to understand that there's an interdependence between us and other people, when people start to also connect to nature, which is the other thing that you're doing as well, and something else has to happen. It's no longer, other people do not become resources anymore. Nature doesn't become a resource. It becomes part of who we are.
And I guess a lot of people are lonely out there.
Yeah.
Loneliness creates a lot of disease, depression, right? And we all like to be together.
Yeah, if you take a look, we also get to invest in health companies, and there's also the Blue Zones, a wonderful series on Netflix. You take a look at that. Loneliness is costing people about 10 years of life expectancy. This is like a real thing. Not to mention, you take a look at depression, anxiety that is booming through the roof, is because people are alone.
Yeah, and in the show there, Netflix, I saw it, I loved it. They talk about how you can recreate those blue zones, right? That it's doable.
Yeah, exactly. So, the same way that we got things into this problematic area, we can also fix it. I mean, we know the solutions, they've been around for a long time. Now it's a question of how can we create them in a more modern way.
How do you envision, yourself and the fund? How do you envision that growing? Today, it's the word J. Can you talk a little bit about that? And how do you see yourself in the future?
We started the fund as a community as well. So we have a global community with 500 investors from 35 different cities. And the goal really was to connect these people, to have a network where we have trust between people. People can create business together, and they can also create good together. That was really the idea behind it. So at this point, really our focus is to use that network. First of all, we look at companies that we think are good, and we support the companies, and we really make them, we kind of give them a super intelligence and super fuel. So when they work with us, this is really one of the reasons we created the fund, is when we invest in companies and companies take our money, they also get the entire network behind us. So I don't think that a single individual can do everything for a company. Today, a lot of funds are based on one guy doing everything for everyone. We have a different approach. Our approach is we have 500 people that can do a lot of stuff for you. So this is board members, people that can open other investors, people that can open doors at other customers, and can give advice and perspective on the market. So the fund is not based on my individual knowledge, it's based on the collective knowledge, and that's the way that we run it.
Beautiful. The power of community right there.
The power of community. Yeah, exactly.
So we met at Yoko Connect because you liked, you told me, hey, Liran, Orca is coming to Costa Rica, and I was like, hey, yes, she's coming here, you should come. And we had a great time in Yoko Connect in early February. And maybe you can share a little bit about your experience there, and what else can we do together?
Sure. First of all, look, I saw the slides and everything else you presented. I saw the website, and I was curious to see what is actually happening. I wasn't quite sure, okay, what am I coming to? I saw the agenda, but I was intrigued. And when I came in, I was really blown away because, you have created beautiful villas, you've created a beautiful community, and people came, and what I saw is everyone who was part of this, their eyes were lit up. They were connected, they were laughing together, they were enjoying, they wanted to spend time together. These are people that came from all over the US or other places as well. And they were like, there was something that was connecting everyone already in the place. So it was a really nice space to be in. And then you brought in, intelligent speakers, and you brought music as well. It was also to make it fun, and you brought authentic conversation. So a lot of stuff happened in between. I didn't get, there was, probably 50, 60 people, something like that. I got to interact maybe with half of them, but new friendships got developed with many of them. I got to learn a lot of new things from different people. And it was clear to me that I want to be part of this too. Okay, part of this experience as well. And all of this is in a magical setting, right? We get to see amazing sunsets, we get to eat amazing food, we get to go to the beach. We're in the jungle. I mean, I cannot even explain the experience. It's theoretical to see it on a website, and actually like stepping here on the land and being here.
It's true. It's hard to convey the sensation that you get here.
All I will say is that it's, every time, getting here is one thing, but I never want to leave. This has been already the third time in Santa Teresa, 2 times, together with you here. And this place is magical. Like, it's really, really hard to leave.
I'm going to be super happy to invite you as a guest speaker for the next Yoko Connect next year here in Costa Rica. But before, we're going to have a thing called the Zoe experience at YokoVillage in the Netherlands. So we're all going to meet there.
Yeah.
And you've introduced us to Zoe. maybe you can share a few words about them.
Sure. I think first of all, what I want to say is that I think we're all connected. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're having a different expression. You're doing this by you're literally building a village physically with a community center, having events. I'm doing this with a fund, shifting capitalism with a whole bunch of people. And Daniel, that is leading Zoe, is doing this through having retreats and conversation to have people have meaningful connection, because the idea is when you have people connect to each other in a deep way, they can really create anything. And people typically do that to create very good things, especially if they're connected to nature and they kind of get the bigger story and the bigger context. So for me, it's all different expressions, and I think the combination of that is very powerful. And this is why I connected you with Daniel, right? Because you have your physical expression, he has the content that he brings and his special sauce into the mix. And from our perspective, it's really giving people the opportunity to look at their money, okay, at the capital and what they have. Not just the capital, it's the resources, their connections, like who they are. Connect people to themselves and really have them realize with their resources something that they're aspiring to do, or maybe they didn't even know that was possible.
That's beautiful. You've given me a lot of insights over the last few days that you spent here, and I'm very grateful for them. I'm curious if you see YokoVillage from outside, what do you think is missing for us in our expression, in the way we present ourselves to the world, or how would you describe that you saw us from afar that you think we can make a difference today?
I think it's a good question. I need to think about it a bit, but I would say one is really capture the experience that the people have. And probably the best thing is to have testimonials. The people that are here are really happy to be with you, and I would have people talk about that. And the second piece, you're doing so many things. You're building a larger community center. You're building another complete area. You're building things in the Netherlands. I mean, all of that. I think it's important for people to understand the scope of it and to really find their path, okay, that works best for them, okay, inside of this big adventure.
Absolutely. We've had this last event here in the Hummingbird Garden space. This is a space that is temporary. We plan to have our bigger community gatherings, events, and retreats in Sangha, in the retreat center. We are right now having a fundraise for that. And we're looking for the conscious investors, like yourself, people who care about the world and want to make an impact. Hopefully, we can do that on time. So by next year, we can do that over there.
But let me ask you something before I know we kind of moving on here. But I want to ask you, what are you trying to realize in terms of like a possibility with this project?
So the possibilities for YokoVillage are big. It's about freedom, extra freedom. It's about also prosperity. It's about sense of belonging, and also about peace. We have those two together, belonging and.
What does peace look like for you?
So for me, peace is because I'm always overworked, and I'm looking forward just to to work less and be a little bit more in peace. Spend a little bit more time with my partner, so that I can have that quality time. For me, freedom, it means having the ability maybe to move from summer to summer and maybe not spend in one place the entire year. But whenever I leave Costa Rica, I always want to come back here very, very fast. Not just because it's a beautiful place, because there is already a community here. We have the space, we have some people, and we have people visiting us all the time. But I find that I don't have another community to go to when I leave here. And so creating that also for the future of my children, if they would go to school, maybe not to go to the same school that I've been disconnected from throughout my childhood, and maybe see a vision where freedom is not just that you have a family and you need to spend the next 20 years in the same place just because of that's what the locality dictates.
Yeah, I think you bring up something to kind of get it, full circle. We grew up in a certain way, right, with a certain paradigms of what people think the life should look like, right? And both you and I started on that path, and now we're in a very different path. And what I'm very glad about is that I got to have my son, who's 20 years old, to now work, intern with you for a couple of months to get to see another way of life, another way of doing things. There are so many ways to win in life, so many ways to do and create. And you can achieve a lot, and be happy and free, and generate a lot of that in the process. And I think that's what people are also looking for.
I'm looking for that as well. It looks like I live it all the time, but when you grind, you
Yeah.
work a lot, you also miss along the way. I think we're all a little bit are to blame for overdoing. There is a path of balance that any person who is a doer should find. And I'm also in that path of seeking it. Any advice in regards to
Yeah, I do.
that?
First of all, I want to be clear. Look, it sounds maybe like we're kind of soft and we don't, we're just like, doing like yoga all day long. That's really not the case. I'm really up to a lot of stuff, and so are you. So for me, it's not about not doing things, it's doing things differently. So today, the biggest difference for me is in the past, I used to do everything. And even though I had a big team, I do it on my own with a bunch of people. But the experience was always me, and then there's everyone else. The difference for me now is that I do everything with community. Everything that I do is now with multiple people. And when I'm authentic with myself and they're authentic with me, and we get to be up to something together, we get to create stuff. Even if I'm on vacation or if I don't feel well or something else, the project moves forward. It has a life of its own, okay? Because I'm not the only person holding the commitment for that project. In the past, that used to be the case. So I think the way that I'm operating now is different, and that's my advice for you as well. Look at the way that you're operating and upgrade it. Because inside of that, you'll be able to find, the balance that you want and be able to achieve the results.
Well, that's easy to say, harder to do.
It takes practice. Look, you have to really examine the stuff that's blocking you. So, by the way, I had to give up on a lot of stuff. It sounds really easy, but it really wasn't as well. So think about what I had to let go is trust. So, for example, I wouldn't trust anyone to do any work that it's not me or that I didn't sign off or whatever. So, that was something to deal with trust. Second thing is dealing with my communication and by being clear with what I'm asking from people. And we're being open with each other. Am I okay for them to tell me that something is not working? I used to be a manager, 7 years ago. It wasn't okay to tell me that something is not good or not working. I couldn't be with that. Okay, so there's all sorts of stuff like that. Once by the way, I do self-development work constantly for the last 6 to 7 years because I'm clear that I am the lid on everything that I'm doing. Okay, and if I don't get to expand myself, whatever I do doesn't get to expand either. So it took work and practice, but now that practice is part of me, and I'm not at 100%. Okay, I don't want to sound like like I figured everything out. It's there's always something that's not working. There's sometimes I don't sleep well, whatever, and I got to deal with that too. But I give myself more space to also be when they're not working as well. But I always try to go back to what I'm pointing to my North Star, to who I want to be.
How do you project that to your team, to the people that are helping you?
So first of all, whenever I have a conversation, in the fund, when I do calls to update my investors, I always starting with my intention, why we created this. I don't start to talk about the financials and the portfolio. I start every time, they know it. The second slide, other than saying hello, thank you for coming, this is why we created this fund. To do good and do well, to turn scarcity into abundance. By the time we're done by 2030, we would positively impact 1 million people, and we have reduced or offset 51 megaton of CO2. So every time I threw myself up to that, and now we've got the context. So I spend time to talk about the context. And we do have breakdowns. Sometimes, things are not in my expectation, but when I take a look, the other thing that I do, that I was trained to do is when there are complaints, I try to listen not to the complaint, but the commitment. Behind every complaint, there's a commitment. And very often the commitment is the same. Again, the way it was realized is different. But when someone is complaining about something, first of all, I tell them, look, thank you very much, because I get that you are, you want to have a very high integrity, okay, in what we do, and that doesn't work for you, the way we're doing it. Okay, I agree with that too. That's something I want as well. Okay, now let's talk about how we can create that. This is different than me fighting with that person on exactly what, how to do something.
How do you project to your team when somebody is not doing the right thing? What do you, or if you even, if there's financial difficulties, what's your strategies around?
Yeah. So first of all, if you take a look, the performance is really the ability to achieve the result that you're out to get, whatever that is. Okay. So for every business or sport, whatever, there's a certain goal you want to achieve. So in a business, it could be financial metrics. And when there is a breakdown in performance, that something is not working, it's usually because someone didn't deliver, okay, on something. So that happens, and it happens often, especially in business that they're up to something that is not just like replicating something that already works. So if you're on the front, that's going to happen. What I typically do when that happens, in the past I used to point fingers and say, you're wrong, you're bad, okay? There used to be labels. I don't do that anymore. What I look for is I look for what's missing. One is I acknowledge that that's a situation. We wanted to reach that target, and we didn't. Okay, what was missing for you or for us to be able to reach it? What's missing is a much more powerful question than like, what did you do wrong, or what, you know, like in that level.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like you can have a very good career also in just helping people from your experience, guiding entrepreneurs and founders on how to deal with problems. I think that spending these days next to you have been very insightful for me personally. I'm very grateful. Before we go, I'll ask you one last question.
Sure.
What do you think about the development of psychedelics that we're seeing right now? Some people like to call it branded drugs. What's your take on all this?
Yeah, so first of all, because our fund also looks at human consciousness and human awareness, that's also an area of interest for us in general. I think 10 years from now it happened. Like when we look back, I don't know, from 20, I don't know, call it 35, it happened. What I mean by it happened is that it's already been like a standard part of medicine. By the way, I'm not going to talk about all the psychedelics. I'm not an expert on all of them, but if you take a look, there's today research that has been done on MDMA that is already showing to be super effective for anxiety and depression. Ketamine is proven to be already working. By the way, one of our portfolio companies, we invested in a company that does microdose of ketamine. They're taking people that are resistant to anxiety and depression, and the medication is not working for them. And within 2 weeks, 80% of them now are, you know, back to life. They drop from severe cases to mild, and that's life-saving for people. So I can already see the effect of that. And in the pipeline, there's MDMA that, you know, this August is going to get in the process of approval of the FDA. That will be across the US. Right now, it's already approved in Colorado and in Oregon for treatment. And there are psychiatrists and psychologists that are being trained to deal with that. And the same thing with psilocybin, with active ingredients of magic mushrooms. So I think when people go through that experience, one thing that happens is their default mode network, the area that they process the world, all the thoughts that they have on themselves and the world, that area starts to get a little bit suppressed, and they start to be able to create new neural pathways that allows them to create new thoughts. And then people get unstuck. If you take a look, a lot of times of anxiety and depression and other stuff is we get stuck in a certain pattern, we cannot get it unstuck. Sometimes it's biological. It's not like I'm going to give you coaching and you'll get out of it. Those substances have a miraculous ability to get people unstuck, get them out of addiction, get them out of all these states. The other thing, by the way, that's magical around it, which is I think that's going to be one of the key applications. When you create new neural pathways, you actually start to become someone who can learn new things. Usually with age, we start to lose that. So there's a whole trend now for longevity. There's multiple companies working on the physical side of it. Okay, how can we live longer? How can we get rid of disease? But very few companies deal with the mental side of it, with the brain. How do you get rid of neurological diseases? How do you stop degrading your memory? Okay, or your quality of life degrades with your brain as well. Those substances have the ability to reverse a lot of those effects. And again, I'm going to be careful with the claims. Other people will have to prove it. But that's looming, and it's on the horizon, and this is why there's also a lot of big initiatives behind them. And I think that 10 years from now, it's happened. I mean, clinics are going to be using that. Therapists and psychiatrists are going to be dealing with that because it's a lot more effective. What we have today is just not working fast enough, and there's just not enough people to help.
At YokoVillage, we have about 20,000 entrepreneurs that are following us. Who would you like to see maybe approaching you, if at all?
Okay, thank you for asking that. So I'm always happy to look, and talk to new entrepreneurs. First of all, I always start with the intention. I want to talk to people who are they declared and they can say that they're out to change something in the world, either to support, to make a difference in the environment or with people. So that's the first question I ask an entrepreneur. Why did you create this company? Why are you doing this? Usually most VCs don't ask that question. The second thing I want to say is that they're out to make a substantial impact. Usually I ask them by 2030, what would have changed in the world because of your activity? What happened? So for companies that are in the medical space or anything that impacts people, I want to see that they can impact at least 1 million people, call it within 7 years. And if it's a company dealing with the environment, I'd like to see that they can reduce, call it at least 10 megaton, okay, within 7 years. So most companies, they would know, right? Like,
yeah, if you ask me what's a megaton and how you calculate that, I have no idea.
they would know.
But-
That's not your concern. That's their job to know, but they would know, right? I can give you examples of companies we invested in as well, to kind of give you the idea. But in general, we invest typically in seed and A. So the companies already kind of know a little bit about what they do. They already have a little bit of a product, and then we can use our network to support them and really make them shine and kind of put rocket fuel on what they're doing.
That's amazing, Eran. I hope we have more people like you reaching out to help the planet and experiencing themselves in a conscious manner, wanting to do good. You're definitely one of those people. I'm honored to have you here. I hope to get more of you, more people similar to you here that are doing good. There's many ways to do good, but you're definitely doing it in a very powerful way. So thank you so much.
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity both to be here and to contribute to you, and I don't take that lightly. So thank you.